What's up, everyone? I'm Ethan with Hive Sports, where we give you all things NFL and college football. Today, I'm going to be going over our Week 1 college football best bets. But first, before we get into it, let's get a recap of Week 0. A small slate, but not the best start for us for the college football season. We went 1-3. Let's start off with the Iowa State-Kansas State game. Really good game. We had Kansas State minus 2.5, but they ended up losing outright to Iowa State 24-21. This is a game that the weather really played a strong factor early on in the game. And I truly think that Dylan Edwards going down with an injury really early on in the game was a big hit to the Kansas State offense. Avery Johnson, I thought, played pretty well, especially towards the end of the game. And, I'm not one to usually make excuses, but I do feel like there were a couple spots by the refs that maybe were a little bit unfavorable. But regardless, Iowa State played well. Really good game. Starting 0-1 with that one. The second game we had was Kansas versus Fresno State. We had Fresno State to cover the plus 12.5. And I think this was just a pretty big letdown game. E.J. Warner didn't play super great. But man, Jalen Daniels and that Kansas team, Jalen Daniels was 18 for 20 passing, super efficient in the air, on the ground. He looked a lot better than he did last year, and I think Kansas shocked a lot of people in Week 0. The next game we had the Sam Houston State covering plus 10 against Western Kentucky. That was one that was a heartbreaker. Sam Houston was fighting for most of the game, and they came out in halftime with a 14-0 run to give themselves the lead. And I really thought there was a shot that Sam Houston was going to win the game outright there, but Hunter Watson and that offense really had nothing left towards the end of the game, and Western Kentucky just took over. And the spread was close to covering or pushing, but Western Kentucky ended up winning 41-24, and so that was 0-3 to start the day. And then Hawaii saved us in our bank account at the end there, covering the minus 2.5 that we had. They ended up beating Stanford 23-0. Micah Alejado really showed that dog. I mean, that ankle injury didn't look really good in the game. So that's something definitely to look for moving forward. But happy that they covered there. So hoping that Week 1 will be better for us and we'll get into the green. So let's go ahead and start off with our first bet for our best bets. It's going to be Auburn minus 2.5. So Auburn playing Baylor Friday at 5 p.m. A lot of people are siding with Baylor right now. There's a lot of hype going on behind Baylor, but I really feel like they're going to have trouble blocking Keldric Faulk, a really, really strong pass rusher for Auburn. I feel like Jackson Arnold, needed a new scene to succeed. I mean, he had some flashes at Oklahoma, and just that team went pretty downhill pretty fast last year. But you really can't speak enough about what Auburn did in the offseason. I mean, bringing in Eric Singleton, was one of our top transfer wide receivers from Georgia Tech. They have a lot of weapons on offense with Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons. Jackson Arnold's going to have a lot of weapons to throw the ball to, and I feel like that SEC defense in Auburn is going to be pretty strong. I know it's in Waco, so Baylor has that home field advantage. Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington give Baylor some solid firepower, but I think Auburn has enough talent now and is brought in enough talent in the transfer portal to take the win here. So I'm going to lock in Auburn minus 2.5, but definitely see why people like the Baylor side. But I think the hype with Auburn is real, and I think a lot of people are thinking that Hugh Freeze is not the best coach, and that's why they're automatically not going to cover this. But I'm siding with Auburn here, and I'm excited to see what that kind of revamped Tiger offense and defense will look like. Our next pick we have is also a Friday game, 7:30 p.m. game, Central Michigan versus San Jose State. And again, I'm hearing a lot of people side with the Spartans at a minus 11.5, but I'm going the opposite. Give me Central Michigan plus 11.5. I really like the fact that they brought in Matt Drinkall from Army and the defensive coordinator from Army as well. And I have to give a special shout out to Jim Chapin, Central Michigan's new offensive coordinator, was my running backs coach in college. That guy is an offensive mastermind. He helped that Eastern Washington offense be a top offense in the FCS. Central Michigan is returning their starting quarterback, Joe Labus. They have a strong pass rusher in Michael Heldman, who I believe is CMU's all-time leader in quarterback hurries. And that San Jose State offense just didn't perform well last year. The games that they won were against pretty poor teams. They lost some weapons on offense. I think there's a lot of hype behind San Jose State, and rightfully so. But Central Michigan is bringing in some pretty good pieces and brought in a strong coaching staff that I think is going to instill some discipline on that team and allow them to keep this game within double digits. So I'm going to go Central Michigan plus an 11.5. Moving on to our Saturday games, we have Saturday best bets. Our first one is going to be over 56.5 for the Montana State versus Oregon game. That game's at 1 p.m. on Saturday, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Dante Moore is coming into that Oregon team. He started at UCLA and then sat out behind and sat behind Dylan Gabriel last year when he transferred to Oregon. But he's experienced playing, against high caliber teams. And that Oregon offense, Kenyon Sadiq, DeCorian Moore, Gary Bryant Jr., etc. They have plenty of offensive weapons. Mekhi Hughes, they're going to have a big upgrade in the ground game. And they're just going to have a lot of weapons to throw the ball to. And Dante Moore also is just a competent runner as a quarterback. So I feel like Oregon could easily put up 40 points. And let's not sleep on Montana State, the FCS national runner-ups in the national championship last year. I know they're without Tommy Mellott now, who went drafted in the 2025 draft at quarterback, but they averaged 40 points a game last season, leading the FCS. Montana State is a well-known powerhouse in the FCS football, and I really feel like this game could be a 40-20 game or a 42-18 game. I think Montana State will do enough to get 2 or 3 scores. And with how much firepower Oregon has, I think that's enough to get this spread easily covered. So I'm going to lock in that over 56.5 Montana State versus Oregon. Another FCS matchup, FCS versus FBS matchup. My second pick on the Saturday slate is going to be the under 48.5 with Nicholls versus Troy. That game's on Saturday, August 30th at 4 p.m. Troy had a couple decent wins down the stretch last season, but overall they weren't super great. They had some injuries with Goose Crowder, who was their starting quarterback and then was, injured with a concussion and a shoulder injury. And there's some hype behind him coming back, but Nicholls in week 0 upset the number 4 team in the country, Incarnate Ward, held them to 6 points, a team that was projected to be one of the higher scoring offenses. And Nicholls just has a history of being a strong defense. I'll also say Nicholls is not an offense that's going to score a ton of points. They're one of those teams that's really defensive minded. They also, scored 20 or 21 points against Incarnate Ward last week, but one of the scores was a pick 6. So, really they scored 14 points, and I think Troy's defense can potentially hold them to a similar scoring range. And then I think Nicholls' defense is strong enough to kind of rein in Goose Crowder and, rein in that rushing attack that Troy has. So I'm going to lock in the under 48.5. I think Nicholls is an FCS team that is going to be under the radar this year, but showed in week 0 that their defense is going to be top in the country. And then the last pick that we have, a Sunday game, is going to be under 49.5 in the Notre Dame and Miami game. That game is Sunday, August 31st at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. This is a game that there's projected to be some rain. Notre Dame is a run-first offense. Notre Dame is starting C.J. Carr, first-time starter, which means they're going to definitely lean on the best running back in the country, Jeremiah Love, to run the ball. Notre Dame's defense is just also going to be so great. I believe that Carson Beck is going to revamp his career a bit at Miami. It's a quarterback-friendly offense, but week 1 against arguably, a top 3, top 5 defense in the country is going to be really tough to score a lot of points. And I don't think Miami's weapons are, super crazy like they were at Georgia 2 years ago with Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers when, Carson Beck was a top 2-3 quarterback in the country. So I really think because of the weather, because Notre Dame is a run-first team, also Miami has a pretty solid run defense too. So they might fare well against that running attack against Notre Dame. I just feel like all things point to this game being a dogfight, but be under that 50-point spread, or 50-point over under. So that 50-point total, sorry. So I'm going to lock in under 49.5 for Notre Dame versus Miami. Now, there are a lot of games over the next 5 days, and so I'm going to be watching a lot of college football. Obviously, it's week 1, so I'm hoping that in the future I'll have more and more best bets. One thing that I'll say, if you would like us to preview every single game in the slate, leave a comment down below. We're happy to do that. We're happy to give some leans, but we just wanted to give you the picks that we're locking in for the weekend. And so these are the 5 picks that we're locking in. I'm hoping for a bounce back from the 1-3 start we had in week 0. And I really think, I really think that these picks will do well. So I'm really excited for this weekend, regardless of whether, I go 5-0 or 0-5. As a football fan, super excited to see a full slate of football in the next 5 days. So feel free to leave some comments down below if you agree or disagree with some of these picks. Would love to hear some of your best bets as well. Please like, subscribe, follow Hive. We have lots more content coming your way, so be on the lookout for that.